Why don't we start with you guys introducing yourselves and telling us what your newsletters are all about?
I'm Erica Cerullo. I am the co-founder of A Kind, a website where we sell the pieces and tell the stories of emerging fashion and home designers. And then we also create a lot of content, including an email newsletter called 10 Things that we send once a week that is purely content focused and driven. And it was spawned by wanting to promote a sale we were doing on the site 2 years ago. And it has become one of the most successful parts of our business in a very odd way. So we basically bring together 10 discoveries that my co-founder and I find every week, everything from recipes to beauty products to music videos, and people seem to really like it.
I'm Jess Gross. I'm the editor of Lenny, which is an email newsletter co-founded by Lena Dunham and Jenny Connor. This is the Lena Show, me and Jenna. So it's primarily targeted at women 18 to 35, and it talks about politics, fashion, health, style, just the gamut. And it comes out twice weekly. On Tuesdays, we have a full newsletter, which is 5 pieces of content. Stories ranging anywhere from 3,000 words to tiny stories or just visual stories, so, an illustration. And then on Fridays, we have Interview Friday, so we just release a single interview. And we use original illustrations. We only do original content. There's no aggregating. That's it.
I'm Nick Kwa. I write a weekly newsletter about podcasts. It makes no money. I do it by myself. There are often really unfortunate typos. It's also a weekly column in Neiman Lab for some reason. But my day job, I work for Slate/Panoply, Panoply is Slate's new podcasting company, as their audience development person and general person around town.
So I want to know why you guys started your newsletters, and I'm thinking a little bit about just like email in general. It seems like a weird thing because I delete a lot of emails personally, and I feel like it's just like I hear over and over again that no one reads their emails. It's all about like social media and commenting and all this stuff. So what do you get from newsletters that you don't get elsewhere, and why did you want to start newsletters?
I mean, when we started Of A Kind in 2010, everybody was like, oh, it's all about Twitter and Tumblr, and it's all of this. This is, who cares about the inbox anymore? And then when you send your first newsletter, and we were, just sent newsletter to promote products, so we release multiple new products a week that are all limited edition and exclusive to the site. And then you watch your traffic spike and you're like, no, actually people are in their inboxes. That's where everyone is. And Twitter and Instagram is all still pretty fleeting. So I think for us, that was the initial push.
I personally had become a little burnt out on producing content that was daily, hourly content. So my previous jobs had been at Slate and then at Jezebel, and I still love and read those sites, but I had personally gotten tired of making that sort of content. And so when the opportunity came up to start this newsletter, I really jumped at the chance to do something that was more intimate and more focused and away from the noise of the greater internet. So, tweet, it's just, on Twitter, it's just constant new content. And the same with most daily websites that are just continuously updating. But it felt nice to have a respite from just that endless blaring news cycle.
There's actually 2 parts to the story. The first part is why I decided to write anything in the first place and decided to cover podcasting, but that's not what we're talking about. So let's talk about the second reason why the newsletter, not something else. Newsletter is because it's the easiest thing to do. Like, it's not a blog because you have to pay for a nice blog if you want to have it nice. And it's like looking at a blog that's not updated or is updated once a week is kind of really super sad. And also it's like you got to do a lot of work, get people into the blog and say, hey, I updated the thing. You should go to the thing. Also, Tiny Letter is like super easy to use. Really shit I got from MailChimp here. But yeah, it's like to get from point A to point B the quickest. And then I had to do the least amount of work was why it is a newsletter.
And I think as a consumer of content, it's nice to have something that's really contained. And that this is the only thing that you have to read, where it's not going to push you to 14 other stories at the bottom of the page.
Yeah. Why did you start writing about podcasts, though? Because you're not in podcasting. I've always found it kind of fascinating.
I still am not in podcasting.
I know.
November happened. November 2014. Two things was happening in November 2014. We're in the middle of the first season of Serial. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody was trying to talk about podcasts. I've been listening to podcasts for a long time, for many reasons, largely of which stems from mental health situations. But I kept reading things in the papers, I kept reading things in publications that just made no sense to me. It did not really feel like it was telling the story of podcasting right. It wasn't even getting the concept right. I was like, screw it, I'll just like put something out there. Hopefully this will be fun. Over time, I'll see what happens to it. The second thing was that I was really bored at my day job at the time, and that's why I started it. And I just because I really loved the space and I really wanted to understand more about it. So I just started writing about it because nobody else is doing it. Mm-hmm. That's the long-winded answer.
And after like 2 weeks, everyone was subscribed to your newsletter, not podcast.
A couple of months. It took some time.
How did you get the word out about your newsletter specifically?
I just put one tweet out and
Really?
I just sent it out. I have no idea how anybody found it. I still don't. That's why I don't make any money off it, because it's not a sure thing.
Word of mouth.
That's a dark social, yo.
And what's the main way you guys see new subscribers coming in?
It's a variety of ways. I mean, we do break our own news because we do original content, and so sometimes it's from news stories about us. Sometimes it's from, the biggest driver of subscribers we've had so far was the piece we ran by Jennifer Lawrence, which just blew up hugely, and people started hearing about us. And then, some is through social, some it's sort of various ways. And every time we put out a new newsletter, we get a bump. So we have a lot of really dedicated readers, and they will forward it to their friends, and that's another really big one for us.
I got a question about that, actually. Do you think that Jennifer Lawrence piece would have had any different reception if it wasn't on the newsletter?
That is a great question. Part of we are doing something that I don't know. I've never seen anyone do it before. I'm not trying to say we invented it, because I don't think we did, but I haven't seen other newsletters do it, in that our Tuesday newsletter has a 24-hour exclusivity window. So it is nowhere on the internet. It is only in the email for that 24 hours. We don't put it online. We wait till the next day. And so it's possible that something about that exclusivity and that you couldn't just link to it maybe made more people talk about it, but it's sort of a counterfactual that I can't prove. I would love to think that that's true. We're doing something new and everyone's responding. Sure, let's go with that narrative.
I do think having content that lives exclusively in the newsletter is a driver of signups for sure. Yeah. We don't post our 10 Things content anywhere on the internet. And I think, and we do that because we want people to sign up for the newsletter and to get it that way.
Yeah. And why do you want people to sign up for the newsletter rather than having something that's shareable and tweetable online? I've always sort of wondered this about these newsletters.
Well, for us, our core business is these limited edition products from up and coming designers, and it's easier to get people's attention when you're in their inbox, and it's what you're speaking to. It's easier to get them by sending an image to their inbox than to be like, hey, come to the site right now in some other forum, or have them just add that naturally to their internet pathway or whatever.
Right.
Do you think you lose anything? I'm thinking about Lenny too. What do you think you lose by not immediately posting something online?
I think sometimes we could probably lose readers, but my old boss at Slate, David Platts, had a great expression for your core audience, which was virtuous readers. And those are the people that are on your team. They will keep coming back. They are your subscribers. And I feel like not putting online, we're not losing virtuous readers. We're probably losing a lot of people who would read maybe one article that they thought was interesting, but they wouldn't read other articles. They wouldn't really be our people. So I'm not so concerned with that. But I do think we do lose.
Yeah, screw those people. Those
people could become your people.
Right, because but if you chase after those people, right, it becomes an economies of scale argument,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
You want to build out your publication to hit everybody. You know this, Jetta. Because you work at BuzzFeed, and it's really about that quantity. But if it's a situation where we know that the core audience is the people who come to you, that's the people who are going to give you money and do good stuff with you, I think.
And that was a really, I was working as a freelancer before I took this job, and I started writing. I also started doing a tiny letter, and it was really, really fun. And I realized that the reason I was having so much fun doing it, even though I too was not paid to do it, was people who read it had opted in. No one was getting this that didn't want to get it. And when you're writing for a Slate or wherever else, you have commenters telling you, like, this is garbage, this headline was misleading, I didn't want to read it, why am I here? Like, get out of my face. And so,
why are you here?
Why are you here?
No one's forcing you.
Exactly. I mean, that's obvious, but still, like, that's just like every commenter on the internet is like, why was this written? Why aren't you talking about something more serious, or whatever their complaints are? And so it was nice to have a respite from that, because everyone there who was reading it because they had signed up.
Yeah. So without comments, I mean, I think it's kind of amazing to have to like not allow comments on things, which is, I mean, there's just like, whenever I've posted things I know on BuzzFeed, it's like the comments are almost always totally irrelevant to what you're talking about, and abusive, trolly, make me really depressed. And I've always like hoped that and then we have this horrible thing on BuzzFeed too, where people can give you like a badge. So they like click on the fail badge if they see like anything that they might not like, and then you have this like, you go to the page and there's this huge badge that says fail on like the article you just wrote, and there's no way to remove it. So that's depressing. Yeah, it's terrible. So how do you get feedback if not through things like comments and like retweets and tweets and Facebook?
I mean, we are on social media. We have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have Instagram. So people let us know. Yeah. But there's something, and we have an email address. People let us know. But I mean, there's something about having those comments somewhat divorced. They're not just like below the article as if they are part of the article. Right. I think that having that just moment of distance is nice for us as editors and writers.
It's kind of nice for people to have to like go the extra mile to decide that they want to comment. Yeah, totally. And we get a bunch of customer service emails. So if we recommend like a nail polish or something that we love, we'll get people writing in and being like, have you tried this and also this? And my favorite thing is this.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. And you get a lot of people like immediately responding to. I know this because I always respond to you, and I'm like, oh, that's some hot gossip in the podcast world.
Well, there's like a couple of functions to that, right? Like one is Hotpot is a trade industry newsletter at the end of the day, even though there's a lot of really relevant stuff around it. And so you're talking about it's a market that's underserved, right? Like, does anybody here is dreaming about a career in radio at all?
Oh, cool. Two of you.
Get ready for garbage life. Because
it's so great.
Oh, yes, maybe nowadays it won't be, but like that's a historically underserved like talent pool. I mean, I crap on public radio, this public radio system a lot, and they do really good work, and it's wonderful. It's just it's an industry that has relatively little avenues of self-reflexivity. There isn't enough trade reporting done about it, and so I accidentally stumbled upon making this newsletter that was a place for people to convene and commune around. And so that's why people are very responsive. And I think that's not quite replicatable unless you're covering something that's, really undercovered, and that community has a means of access to you. For me, it's Twitter and email principally.
Okay. Yeah. Speaking of podcasts, because that's what I do, let's talk about me here. Do you think that there is a correlation between like the rising popularity of podcasts and the rising popularity of newsletters?
Absolutely. I mean, I think people are overwhelmed by just the 24-hour news cycle that is endless. You cannot possibly read everything that you want, you feel like you should read or you have to read. And so I feel both podcasts and newsletters are sort of speaking intimately to you. They're a break from all of that noise, and it's just there's this intimacy to both of them that I think is really similar.
And I think they're both contained in that same way. There's a start and an end, and Of a Kind has a podcast that we started sort of on a whim this summer as an outgrowth of our 10 Things newsletter. It's called A Few Things because we decided this time not to hem ourselves into a number. And people have responded really well to that. And, we never have done any radio or anything in that forum and have been really surprised by the engagement, because I do think that, this is like booming all of a sudden.
I think that actually the parallel is a lot more, there's a lot more of a parallel there. I think both structurally have the same issues. Customer acquisition or listener acquisition is, they face the same structural issues. Like, it's really hard to get somebody to opt in to both things. It's really hard to track both things. Like, there are still analytics and metrics issues for both concepts. And I think if you could figure out newsletters, chances are you'd probably be able to figure out podcasts as well.
Yeah, we found that a lot of people really don't like the word subscribe, which is interesting. And
sign up. We learned
sign
that
up,
too.
or we say follow sometimes, and that just like brings in a lot more people. It's weird how these small kind of wording changes.
I think it's because when you say subscribe, people think they're going to have to pay.
Totally.
That's why the people don't
Well,
like that.
the magazine world has scared us from the word subscribe. You think you're going to get things in the mail for the next 12 years.
From everyone. So newsletters have all different kinds of formats. Like, you can have original pieces, you can have mostly links, GIFs, whatever. How did you decide kind of on the format for each of your newsletters? What you wanted them to look like and kind of what sort of things you wanted them to include?
I don't have a good answer for you.
You always put a great GIF at the end.
Well, it has no design. Like, I'm not the most representative person here, because like I literally like write however I want it, like how it feels right at the time. After a while, there are some things, like I write for the CMS, so I write for however tiny letter CMS is structured. After a while, I kind of understood it's easier for me personally to break it apart by item. So I write the first sentence as if it's a headline and I bold it, largely because it's easy for me, and in my head, if it's easy for me, it's easy for the reader. So that's kind of the transference that I make of myself to design the thing, and it iterates over time as well, based on how I feel and what people tell me as well.
Mm-hmm. I mean, ours is a newsletter. Ours is really a mini magazine. It's just a magazine that goes into your inbox, it was a financial and bandwidth decision to make it a newsletter instead of a site, because a site takes so many more people to make it run. It's so much more investment. And so a newsletter you can do pretty much on a shoestring. And so we knew that we wanted to do original content. We didn't want to aggregate. And the kind of content that we wanted to do was sort of a big discussion among all the staff members. And to us, again, it really is that it's in a newsletter is great, but in a little bit incidental.
The format of our 10 Things newsletter grew out of the fact that basically we were hemmed in by the newsletter templates we had. So we did this completely on a whim, and in light of that, we're not talented enough at HTML design and newsletters to make it prettier than it was the first time we did it, basically. So it's very text driven, and it's just bullet points. And I think that has ultimately served us well, because we don't give a lot of context, and I think it has encouraged engagement. So it's just a sort of quick, quippy little line about each of the things. And if you're interested, you click for more.
I want to talk about the economics of this, because people are probably curious, like, can you make money off of these? So do you want to talk about that first?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we are not a typical newsletter product. I mean, we have celebrities at the helm of it, and they get a lot of press for everything they do. And so we were, out of the gate high profile and had a lot of subscribers. And so we've recently made an ad sales partnership with Hearst. And so they don't have any ownership over our company, but they sell the ads, and they take a percentage and we take a percentage.
Can you talk about a percentage?
No.
No one's going to talk about that, Nick.
No one's going to talk about that. So, I mean, certainly we think we can make money at it.
I think we could make money on our newsletter. We've never really aggressively tried to. I think for us, it's that same idea that the online digital advertising space is in a funny place, and getting a banner ad doesn't feel like the right answer to our question. So it's figuring out what the thing that actually makes sense that our audience would respond to, that they would care about, and that wouldn't feel like dirty to them is.
So I don't make any money, but I think there are three models to it, right? So you have the skim, which approaches it from a concept of scale. So they do sell like ad units, and I think the CPMs are relatively high because, you know, you could make the argument it's opt-in. The skim also is unique in the fact that it has a very sort of desirable demographic to sell to advertisers, so on and so forth. And then you have something like a pay-for-subscription. Ben Thompson's Tractackery is a really good example of this. He's a one-man operation. I think he charges like upfront, and as a sort of a lead generation method, he gives out one free sort of newsletter a week. He's very, very good. That is a situation where you really have a premium product, and it really deserves the payment for it. And then you have newsletter as, you know, content marketing in a lot of ways. It's kind of like a dirty word, or maybe slightly inaccurate, but a lot of publications, BuzzFeed, Fortune, just about any digital media publication right now uses newsletter as a retention technique. So it's kind of like, the idea is that you hook a person in, the person will return to the site, and the person develops a loyalty and a relationship with the site. So that's another way you could sort of quantify value if you wanted to. I think those are the three predominant models. Or you could just be a patron, I guess. You could like get a really rich person to fund it. Also another model. I don't know.
What advice would you give to people who want to start newsletters?
Just do it. Just do it today. It's like a tiny letter takes 30 seconds to set up. It's really fun. It will give you, I mean, if you want to be a writer more generally or a content producer, it's a way of having a weekly or daily practice, which is incredibly important to have. So whether you're doing it in a newsletter or you're doing it on a Tumblr or whatever, I think that it can only be good for you.
How often, if somebody is starting a personal newsletter or starting a newsletter out of the gate, how often do you think that they should do it?
Once a week. At least once a week.
Okay.
I started my newsletter because people were, I was a freelancer, and so I had several pieces a week, and people like my mom and my mother-in-law were like, I want to read all your pieces. Where do I find them all? And I was like, all right. So I started it, and I made it into, I would pick sort of one main story every week to tell, and it was like usually not even about what I was writing. It would be like, I'm reading this biography of the Mitford sisters, and here's some like juicy dirt from this like, from the early 20th century. Like I would just make it like geeky and hot Edwardian gossip. And I just would make it funny and entertaining to myself, because that was, and then at the bottom I would say, and here's like, here's what I'm writing. Here's like what my kid is into. Like I would do little product recommendations of things that I was buying or that she was into. And like people really liked it. I mean, mostly people who were related to me or friends with me, but like I honestly can't tell you how much joy it gave me to write it and produce it.
My friend Lauren Sherman, who is the New York editor of Business of Fashion and who I think was originally slated to be here, has a tiny letter newsletter called Lauren in the Afternoon that you should all sign up for if this sort of thing is any interest to you. And she writes an intro every month about something topical, sort of fashion related or writer related, and then links to things she's written and things she's read.
Like psychologically, keep your expectations low,
Yeah.
but like give it everything you got, and then if you stop having fun, don't do it, because I mean, just think about it this way. You know all those people who tweet from brands, they're like dying inside, and you can kind of feel it. So like that's like the sort of psychological equivalent that you should sort of make for yourself, I think.
Cool. All right.
I'm not gonna get hired ever again.
Some sad stuff, man.
Yeah, we're all dying.
Let's all talk. Well, why don't we like each say the name of a newsletter we think people should sign up for that isn't our own? Which I'll start by saying that Anne Friedman has an amazing. I mean,
the
it's
best
like,
one.
I know it's like the best newsletter in the world, and you should all sign up for it. You already kind of said.
I like Today in Tabs. They were really mean about Lenny, though, and so I unsubscribed out of sadness. But it's a really good newsletter, so I still have to say that aloud, even though I'm no longer a subscriber.
So there are two kinds of newsletters. One, an actual newsletter business. Margot Boyer-Drive from Poncho is here. That's a really good weather newsletter service that I personally use. But in terms of like fun stuff, Laura Olin's Everything Changes is really good. It's theoretically the Alls newsletter now. If any of these words mean nothing to you, you haven't been in New York media long enough. But it's a really good newsletter where nothing's ever the same.
Everything changes.
Everything changes.
Cool. I think sometimes people try to start these things about something that they're not super passionate about, but that they think people will be interested in. I think it's important to start a newsletter about something that you're actually passionate about. It's really obvious in like newsletters and in podcasts when somebody thinks that they're like giving a product to the masses, but it's not something that they actually want to be talking about. So write about what you love. And I think we should open this up for questions.
There's like a constant like struggle for writers to just be the jack of all trades. So I wanted to know like if like you have any advice for writers.
It's tough out there. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I would say get as good as you can at what you're doing. In terms of, I mean, I think it's sort of two separate questions. One is how to be the best writer I can be, and the other is how do I get paid and employed and have a full-time job writing. And so I think the first question is easier to answer because it's, you know, write as much as possible, get as much feedback from trusted people as possible, get a thick as hell skin because you will get rejected. I mean, I got rejected. I mean, now I'm mostly editing, but I mean, up until I took this job in the beginning of June, I was working as a freelancer. And so, you know, even as I had contracts and was making a decent living, like still just rejection in my face all the time. So like that is a reality. But through just the repetition and keep doing it and keep putting yourself out there, you're going to get so much better. Keep technologically abreast constantly. Know what's going on. I've always been, since I entered the job market, able to do some like light HTML coding. I'm no computer scientist. I don't know how to build a website, but just being able to do as much as possible with images, knowing how to make a GIF, knowing how to do video, knowing how to make yourself as versatile in whatever is the next big thing in terms of content, even if it's not only sort of tangentially written content. I think that's incredibly important.